Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, coming to you with hopefully a good audio connection just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, USA. I'm VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer, as well as Sarah Mitchell, our head of documentation. So today, Dion will be doing a presentation, but we're also here to answer your questions, and you can type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Hey, very good. Yes, Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody.
Today. So you share your screen at any point. You have
that
panel.
Wow, I am in control of your TV.
You
Do
are
not
in
adjust
control.
your TV.
Yeah, I see your screen right now. Fantastic.
Awesome, cool. Hopefully we'll have a nice stable connection today. But thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. We always need to have Sarah here so we get the right information to you. And speaking of right information, the topics for today came from some emails we got at guides@alphasoftware.com. So make sure to take time and send those in. We'd really love to hear from you. And along with that, this meeting is your opportunity to ask those questions. So to do so, go to your questions area of your GoToWebinar meeting area, put them in there. Sarah and Dave will be monitoring, and we will do our best to try and answer those questions for you. Sometimes it ends like the Hindenburg, sometimes a little better. So we can't guarantee, but we'll try. And that's the key here. So take the time, send it to us at guides@alphasoftware.com, or take the time and put your question into the Q&A panel there. So today I want to reinforce one thing that was actually presented by my esteemed colleague, Sarah, and what I've been using more and more because I think it's a really super effective user interface technique. Along with that, I also have a question that came in regarding source control, and I want to kind of show you a tool I use, actually two tools I use, but one that's free that you may want to find out that makes your life a little easier. So with that, let's go ahead and start our presentation. So the first part about it, I'm going to talk a little bit about the UI. And again, this is a feature that came in the latest release of Alpha Software. This is a really good release. We've been using it and having a lot of fun with it. A lot of new stuff already going in the new pre-release. They never stop back there, but this is with the production release. So this capability is available with today's release. You don't have to do the pre-release and things like that. So we'll dive into that first, and that's the ability to embed a detail form in a list control. And again, I know Sarah's covered this, but I really it's just something I've been using a lot. It is really, really easy to implement and just makes life really cool. And actually is a very intuitive structure for users. And I'll show you a little bit about that. Before I totally dive into that, just remind you that it is available to register for DevCon 2021 if you have not already, and a lot of people already have, and we really appreciate it. We can't wait for you to be there, and we're gonna have a lot of great stuff with you. But in this case, you can go to alphasoftware.com, DevCon 2021, and register there, and we'll get you in line and get you online with our upcoming conference. Amazing, you know, it's only about 6 weeks left for my kids for school, and then we'll be into summer. So this year's moving along quickly. It's pretty crazy there. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my development environment, and I'm just going to create a real quick, simple demonstration of a list control. So let's go ahead and go in here and do UX. And I'm not going to pick any templates. Of course, we've talked a lot about the ability for you to create templates and reuse them, which will help accelerate your development cycle. So I'll click OK. And I'm going to make this super simple. I'm just going to basically put in one panel card. And look at it, old school. I'm actually going down here and finding them instead of using the add control. I'm still getting used to that. It's so amazing. My patterns are so linked to going to where I want for something. I know where it is. Much easier now. And then in here, I'm almost going to click add control and type in list and add a list control. Okay, list customers. And since I'm using a fabulous list control, we have a quick setup genie built into here. So for people who are kind of newer, as you get to go, you could click OK here and then manually set everything up. But I would highly suggest as you get used to it, and even I use it today, I use the quick setup genie down here that allows me to kind of accelerate that, getting it ready to go. then I can go in and tweak it. So I'll click that. This opens up my first, and it's optimized. This Genie is optimized for getting data from the database. So I've already set up my demo Northwind. Click OK. Click the table. In this case, I'm going to use customers. So it's going to call in back to the customers. Fields, I'll just pick a few of the fields. I don't need all of them. And in my case, I do want a detail view, because the idea behind this is I want to have a detail view where you can edit, modify, and change the record. And you'll see it defaults to a certain structure, and then I can quickly modify it as Sarah has shown you to use it in the list control itself. So in a few more moments, we have our list detail view. You'll see we have our list of customers here, and then our container here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do two things. First, I want to kind of make this easy to look at. So I'm going to go here and turn on the compact theme. So remember, there's like mobile oriented, which everything's kind of larger and bigger because you're on a phone template or a phone environment. But often for like desktop stuff, I'll enable this compact theme. So it looks good. So we'll go ahead and save this. Change this, webinar, and do a working preview. And you'll see it did all the hard work for me, built my basic list and connected it to database, and actually also put together a container that contains both the information about the row. So as I click it, it's already connected into it, and also my buttons down here to do different actions to it. And this gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of use. So what I would normally do is now I've got this container right here, which includes all of those call them sort of list bound data elements. I would then maybe put in a panel card and have it as to the side of the list, or maybe I have it a panel card that's docked and it comes out. There's many different ways you can essentially move this around to make for a really good customer experience or user experience. But in our case, we'd like to do something a little bit more interesting, which is actually embedded in the list itself. And before you could do that, but it took a lot of kind of manual jiggering and doing stuff. And often it was just a lot of work. So in the end, a lot of people didn't do that. So there's a new feature built into this. I'll click Save here. And I'm going to go into my list of customers, and I'm going to go to my detail view. And this is where, we're getting the data. Here are the fields that are coming. Bunch of list properties I can set. Here's my layout, what order of stuff is. But there's a key tab called Detail View. And that really manages all of the information in terms of how does the list connect to the fields? How are the buttons wired up? What can you do? How's it synchronizing? All these things. So when you enable editing in a list with a detail view, this little detail view icon, or I'm sorry, tab will come up, and it gives you all the ability to modify and change those pieces here. Now there's one right here called Detail View Position. This is the new feature. So currently it's on page, but we have a new feature to it, which is called Inside List Beneath List Row. So to enable this, super simple, all you do is click here. Next, it's going to ask me, well, great, what container are your controls in? And you'll notice when I created my list detail view using the wizard, it went ahead and created one called Container 1. So I'll go ahead and select Container 1. And I'll come back and look at this in a minute. So I go there. Now notice, it's smart enough to say, hey, I got to set a few other things so that it will work correctly, because Alpha kind of knows what that container looks like. So what it's doing is this container control right here, it's basically updating a couple style things that will really make sure it looks good once it's in the list. The nice thing is you don't have to worry about this. Alpha is doing it for you. So I'm going to click OK. Let's go ahead and save it. Do a working preview. Now you'll notice a couple of things. Excuse me. Right out of the gate, you'll see that my container now is not being shown because it's set certain things that need to be set to include it in the list control. And now when I click on a row, you'll see that the container expands so I can use it. Now you'll see I have a problem here. My list is a certain size. So let's fix that. I'm going to go ahead and do one thing here is I'm going to go ahead and make a new panel card. Actually, let's see best how to do that. well, I want to fill it. I'll just make this larger. So I'll make this height of like, 700 px. So for this here. And when we readjust that, it's going to look a little bit bigger. It'll be taller. And when we open it up, you're going to see we have the full record here. And if I click on a different row, and it does some kind of nice stuff, you'll notice that it hasn't completely obscured the road below. It's kind of expanded it out from that road here. And I'll show you how you can modify that. May be a little confusing to the user, but we can address that here. But now all the features that are in my detail view just work. So let's say I modify this and click save. It saves it, close it, and it modified it. Everything happened for me automatically. Save that, etc. And keeps in all the offline capabilities. You'll see it's marked it has been updated. So now I can synchronize it or have it automatically synchronize there. So the cool thing about this is I literally clicked 2 items in the profile on the detail view. That was, and just to verify that, is in the list, we go to detail view, select the container that controls, that holds our controls that are linked, and also the detail view position that shows where it goes. Now, as I mentioned, this look and feel here is a little awkward, meaning when I click on a row, it is showing this here. And I'd rather kind of have it obscure what I need to. But here's the cool thing. It's a container. So I can now go in here and start modifying this. I can take off pieces of it. I can use my standard and regular capabilities. I can actually add other controls in here. I can align where the buttons are. So let me go ahead and show you. Basically what I'm doing is I'm making kind of a 2-column presentation of the data. So now when I load this, you'll see, it's a single column scenario there. So I have to play with that some more. So this allows you to basically, I would probably modify this to maybe be 50% of the width. So it looks pretty good for here. Let me go ahead and show you what the 50% looks. So it obscures there. And we'll go ahead and modify that. So yeah, it looks a little bit more. So in this scenario, it will allow you to modify that and include it in here. And the beauty of it is you don't take up other screen real estate. And especially when on a phone or something like that, it just simplifies things. For instance, you don't have to add some JavaScript to open up a container or open up a panel card or navigate or other things like that. And all the capabilities are built into it, so it handles those pieces here. I wonder, yeah, I know what's going on.
I suspect if you gave that container. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yep. What it is that each of these are 100%. So even though I remove the return, it's still going to take the whole 100%. So let me go ahead and take this and set those to be 50%. And now we can go back in and show you can just modify the look and feel so it looks a little better. And that's just, it defaulted to that 100%. So now you can see it's a much more compact representation. I'm not taking up as much space. I could move these buttons over to the right and other pieces there. So it really allows you a lot of flexibility to say, oh yeah, I want to edit this row. I want to edit this row. I want to edit this row, and just click on it from there and it'll be easy to do. So that's a new feature. Then here, I know if you are interested in more details and you haven't seen it before, Sarah did a fabulous job a couple weeks ago and you should go check it out. But I wanted to reinforce it because I'm actually using it on a couple new projects myself, just because it was so simple to implement and it just seems natural. When you click on a row, it allows you to edit that row and put those pieces to it. The last thing you want to look at real quick is that if I go back to detail view and I go into these properties, here are some ways you can adjust it. For instance, how fast the animation is, how to show the detail view. Click on a row open or close icon, or click on a row so you can kind of control. And so you have some details there. And you can also fire some JavaScript that happens after the row is exposed. So there's some nice little sort of tweaks you can make to the behaviors of it so that it works pretty good from that standpoint there. So that's all I'm going to cover here. This is the new detail view capability in a list control. Awesome stuff. I use it a lot. I think you'll get a lot of use out of it yourself. So check it out, play with it. And again, really nice. Doesn't take any work. You just click, and you're good to go. So that is the sort of rehash, to be honest, of that piece. But I'd like to run into it and talk about a different subject. And this came in from another question. But before I do, any kind of questions, comments, anything like that before I move on.
Yeah, two questions. First of all, when you set up the list control using the Genie, does it also set up the events that you need to save those records? Or do you still need to, sometimes if I recall with a list, you had to sometimes pop into a, I think it was a server-side event and tell it to commit the record.
Yeah, so two things. One is when it creates this detail view, first thing it does is it creates these buttons for the common things like save, new record. And in here, it's automatically written that JavaScript. So you don't have to worry about that. And the cool thing about that is that if you don't like a button in an image, you can open this up, copy this out, move it to wherever you want it to be.
Great.
So that allows you to do that. But the other element, if you want to have, for instance, like an auto sync and some other things like that, when you created this in the wizard, it basically used sort of a template, a standard way. But you can go in here to the detail view, and you'll notice there's an area called synchronization policy. So for instance, you can modify this to say, for instance, when someone saves a row, automatically do the sync for you. So you can, once you get kind of comfortable, you'll know how the defaults are basically set. But then you have all the power to go in here. You can also go in here and there's a list of events. So there's no events that are set, but you can go in and change some different events like after render, on change, etc. All the standard functionality is there, but you'll notice it does set certain parameters automatically for you. And so you don't have to go through that process to kind of get it to it will work right out of the box kind of scenario, but now you can fine tune it for your application requirements.
Okay, so someone just suggested something that I was thinking too, and it is, what if you changed the background color of that box? First of all, could you show us how to do that? It might show you that it's not part of the main panel. Like maybe made it get a little like gray.
Interesting. So this is my container. So everything is going to be displayed within this container here. So if I'm going to modify the behavior, look, or feel that, I would use either the container class or the container style. Okay. So I can either, the class is preferred, you create some CSS and then create a class and associate it here. That way you can apply it multiple places and you don't have to worry about going in and editing everywhere you've modified it from there. So I'll go ahead and here in a container style, and you'll see that we have all of the different things we can do. So one is color and background color. So let's give that a try. Let's just make it like a real light red. Okay, so you'll notice for this container, it should contain things with a background.
I don't know about that color, Dion.
I know, it's you're not gonna not see it. So it does work. So by modifying the container, you're gonna modify the background, whether you like the color or not.
And fair enough. You can do that. It's clear that it's different though. Yeah, there's a contrast.
And therefore, exactly. But realize also you're gonna have some other things like a new record there. I see what you're saying is now that I've changed that, it's kind of hiding the stuff over here. So interesting behavior is when I didn't have a color like
that is weird.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting on that. So that's an interesting behavior. Let me go back in there just to experiment with this. And since you hate the color so much, good. Go back in here and let's give it a look. No, it must have been something about when I ran it before. Because it's now doing I was noticing it was showing the whole row, but it must have been something about when I ran it.
Yeah, that looks a little weird, but this looks right.
Yeah, this looks the behavior I want. I want it to take your attention and be able to do that here. So you can see that I can change the background, but do realize when you change the background, you have to look at the style and say, well, do the buttons still look good? Do you want to modify the button look and feel? And that's kind of like, let's look at that real quick just to explore it for a moment. So I'll go ahead and do a background color. Cool. There we go. And then one thing I'm gonna do is go to this button save. And I'm gonna go ahead, since we have this button save, you can use the sub theme concept to use some built-in sub themes that are built in. So you can see right now it's using the basic, but sometimes I like to use capsule. So let's go ahead and use the capsule raised. Okay. So what that did is just change the sort of tweaked the theme that's applied to that one button. So now we'll see this. So, again, the button looks a little strange there. Let's say if I modify it, that looks pretty good. So you can tweak it. but notice it's got a little, so you might have to tweak, you know, a little bit of what your items are, but realize you can use different buttons and make them look a little nicer by using the themes. Let's try one other real quick. Let's try a raised. That may be interesting. Let's try that one. I think what happens is that you have the raised, like when it's not enabled, because right now that button's not enabled until you change the record. Yeah, once I change it, looks pretty good. Now you have like a nice raised button that like kind of looks, and the effects when you drag over it. So you can kind of play with it, but you can style that area so it looks a little bit more of what you're looking for, maybe a little light gray or something to make it less annoying and able to meet what you want from a branding standpoint. But all you have to do is modify the container, the items within it, and Alpha will do the rest of exposing that when the user clicks on that row in the situation.
Very cool. Someone else also mentioned about the color. Not that they didn't like your color, but that using the color would be helpful. And I was wondering if there's a way to set it up so that it always does that. And I don't think that our style would explicitly do it, although you probably want to just create a class and then just use that class over and over again when you create the container.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea behind it is, again, go to classes. You should, like in school, go to class.
Class.
But if you go to class, that's really critical, because then you have your classes in one spot. So if you say, you know, I don't like that color, you hit the class once. If you referred to that class from all of your other controls, then the moment you run it, all of your controls that point to it. So it's a much more easy way to handle the sort of the management of your look and feel, and be able to centralize any modifications and save yourself a lot of time and energy when someone says, hey, I don't like that color. You'll say, cool.
All right, one more quick styling question, and then one more
functionality
question. The phones are lighting up here. This is terrific.
No, that's good. Yeah.
The styling question is, can you use it? Can you, like, for example, right justify or align the detail view container? Can you move where it is?
Yes. So this container right here, again, when you go into you can set the width. So I set the width to be 50%. That's why it's only showing half of when it drops down. If I go to 75, it would cover more of the space.
Sure.
But then in the container style, I believe, actually, you know what I would probably do, just to be honest, is I would change this container, if I wanted to do something like that, to a alignment container. An alignment container gives you the ability to line things centrally, vertically, horizontally, etc. So be careful if you add a new container in here around these, you have to repoint the customer list to that container so it knows what to show.
Right, make sure you use the same name, right, that the list
exactly has. Or go back in and modify it. But alignment is really handy from there. You can also do things like flex layout, which I haven't done a lot, but uses some CSS techniques to allow you to lay things out properly and nicer on it. You're kind of using HTML and CSS tricks to show the controls in a nice fashion. So there's some really nice little features. But yeah, check out either alignment or flex layout, and that will allow you to adjust kind of how these things, are they going to be left aligned? Are they going to be right aligned? And also remember, since I've set these as 50, these are going to expand both of these to extend it. So I may not see that alignment. Once I reduce the width of these controls, then I might be seeing those at that time.
Awesome. Great. Another question. This one's a little harder. I like this. It's a functionality one. And so the question is, in that drop-down detail view, let's say you have, you've opened up the detail view, you went and you've made it change, but you didn't hit any of the buttons. You didn't hit save or anything like that. And you went and clicked on a different row. What happens? And does the thing that happened, is it bad? I guess.
Well, that's a good question. Let's try it here. No, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So let's change this to 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Now I haven't clicked save, but I'm going to go ahead and down here.
And if I see what's happened,
it automatically committed.
Yep, it automatically made the change to the list. It didn't synchronize it, but it made the change.
Yeah, and the issue may be you may not want that. So then the question becomes, well, if someone does start changing this and then they stop, you may not want it to remember that.
So what does reset there do? Does it clear all the fields, or does it undo what you've just changed?
That's interesting. See, I'm seeing that here.
Okay.
But reset is like when you're actually modifying the form. you can reset it there.
And it
But
resets
notice
it back
it's
to its
still
original value. So
what I just did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I might have to look into that. What you may want to do is when you close this, you either accept what the changes have been made or you don't accept the changes and you erase those changes. But I see right now the behavior is that no matter if you open this and if I change something and I close it,
just moving it counts as a change.
Yeah. But it kind of saved it for you automatically. So we may have to look into how you can override that behavior. But the
That
default
might be
behavior,
the behavior you want, though. It's not unusual to have that where you make a change, click off, and you just want it to save and go on to the next one.
exactly, because you may want to get rid of this save button altogether and all
That's a
these
good point.
buttons. So, if I just hide those buttons and then go here, and I'm just doing it the old way, you could put it in a sub container and hide that. The other thing I want to do is I want to go in here. I'm going to go to my detail view. And as I mentioned, I want to go to my synchronization policy and I'm going to turn this on. There's two of them. This says perform client to server. So it's going to send the changes up to the server. And if I enable this, this will also take anything on the server and bring it down, which is a little slower, but it gives you a full round trip. So now the behavior is, watch what happens here. Let's see if that does it this way. So let's say I want to make a quick editor. I can go in here, change this to 55, close it, and notice it changed it and applied it. So now that's in the database.
Applied it, and there it is. Fantastic.
So you can see you get rid of all these different clicks, and you don't have to worry about the person. They're just editing records.
I love it. I mean, the only problem, of course, is the teal color. But other than that, I think you nailed it.
I improved it. Give me your, okay. You deliver a mood board to me, and then we'll talk. Okay. Dave's mood board.
So now let's say you did want to capture that, you leaving that row to go do something else. What event might you try to stick?
I think what you would do is a list of events.
It probably just been select, right? I mean, because that's what you're doing.
On update row.
Yeah,
that's where you trap that. Let's see.
And then you could ask them, you made a change.
It'd actually be on row select.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's go select. So there could be on select, which is the list is set. Nope. After select. Yeah, that's a good one. I'd have to look into that on row. So you have like on update row on. When is clicking a row or use, so it may be one on select because on select triggers when you select a row. So that would be what it's probably using it underneath to save it. So we'd have to look into a little bit more how you'd control that.
Right. All right.
Great question.
Yep. Yeah, really good question. Again, if you want us to research that further, send an email to guides, guides@alphasoftware.com, and we'll get you the answer. I think that might be it for questions on this particular topic. So if you have something else you want to cover.
Yes, I do actually. This came in on guides.
Awesome.
So it had to do with source control, specifically Git. All right. So I'm not going to go through the whole Git thing, but other than use it. It is so powerful. I'm using it on my projects when I'm working with other people. All I have to do is push my stuff. They pull it down. It's a great tool for both keeping track of the history, but also coordinating with other people in a simplistic way. And also I use it when I'm doing development, like when I'm trying out new stuff, I can create what's called a branch. And once I have that branch, I can then start editing it and doing my stuff. And then if someone calls up and says, oh, I've got to get this fixed, I don't have to worry about all those changes in my branch. I can basically go back in, and let me show you here, and apply those changes. So source control does some really, really powerful things in terms of making you a more efficient developer and also kind of covering your tail in case of things go wrong. But one of the things about it is that Alpha has a wonderful source control integration here, but it's not a full source control user interface. It's really focused on, get stuff in and out of Git and manage. So I'm going to go through real quick and set up my Git. So I'm going here to my web projects control panel. I'm clicking my little Git menu here. And in this case, it's saying, hey, there is no repository for your project. So I'm going to create one for you. And I go, yes, go ahead. And I want it to go ahead and add all of them in there. So I'm just going to click there. And if everything works smoothly, boom, I now have my stuff in a Git repository. And what it's done is that behind the scenes, it's created a little secret folder that's normally hidden. Notice I have view, show hidden items. That's why I can see it here. And now it will track all of my changes to my project. So for instance, you'll see right now that I have these 2 items here. So in my Git repository, I can see these items here that are ready to go. So I can just go ahead and commit those. So let's go ahead and there we go. I'm going to go ahead and say initial commit. So they're watching it and click commit. Oh, and click commit. And boom, now I'm back to normal. So now I have all my files in there and good to go. So this is wonderful. Like if I go in and make a change here and make a modification, let's go ahead and just do something real quick. Since the color is not acceptable, we'll go ahead and change the color, make it like a deeper blue. And then the customer's super happy. I save it, I deploy it. I'm good to go. Notice now it's showing this as red. That means that I've made it changed. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, let's see, let's go ahead and go here, modified files. I'm going to say changed color, and I'm going to go ahead and select all and commit them. Boom, I've committed in there and I'm back to there. Now, again, works great, awesome, super handy, but sometimes you kind of want to look at the history and do other things like that. So I came across, I've been using a tool called Tower, which is a really good source control tool. There is like a $75 charge, highly recommended. Check it out when you get a chance. But I also came across something that is also very handy. So I want to show you that. So this is what I use just because it has a super nice interface, easy to use, does a lot of cool stuff, and they keep improving it. But, excuse me, if you don't want to pay for that, what's great is GitHub has what's called GitHub Desktop. And I wanted to share this with you. This is a free product that you can use to manage Git repositories and, more importantly, work with GitHub. And GitHub's kind of becoming the de facto sort of repository. I mean, it's owned by Microsoft. They paid bajillion dollars. It's essentially a free service now. Everybody kind of uses it. There's a lot of support for it. So I've been doing more and more personally. All my stuff is on GitHub, and I've got a GitHub repository. I've got all my different projects on there. I am working with different companies and doing other things like that. So it's all handy from there. So when I was looking at it, I was like, I had an associate who said, I want to use it. And I said, oh, well, just to get you up and going, you can obviously use the Git repository and capability with an alpha. But then I downloaded and installed what's called GitHub Desktop. So I went to their site, I downloaded it, installed it, and now and the only thing I'm not a big fan on, it's not as simple of an interface as the other one, but it works pretty good. So let me go ahead and show you an example. So I've already got a couple repositories of stuff I'm working on here, and I want to add a existing repository. So I've already gone in with Alpha and created my repository. So now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to click Add Existing Repository. I'm going to go find where that repository is. So remember, it put that into my project. Where is my project? What is the folder here? I'll cheat. I'll copy this address. Go back in here. And that's where it's at. And then I click Select Folder. I'm going to add that repository. And now I have this repository right here. So now I have my other 2 repositories and I have this repository. Notice it used the name of the folder, but I can click this and I can actually modify the name so it's a lot there. But now I can go in here and see, for instance, the history. So remember, I had a starting point. I did my initial commit. I did my change color commit. Here's the files that changed. I can see what's changed from there. But also what's nice is I can now do things like, for instance, publish this repository to GitHub. So I can click here, send where it's going to go. I can, I've got my already GitHub account. So now I can publish it. Boom, it goes from my machine up into GitHub, and I'm ready to go from there to share it with other people or just use it as a good backup kind of thing. I can also do things, for instance, like create a new branch. So to give you, I'll show you this. I'll say, customer still doesn't like color. And I'm going to create a new branch. Okay. And it's giving it a name because you name. Okay. And switch the branch. Okay. So in this case, the idea behind branches is now when I'm editing this thing, I'm in my branch. So if I make a modification, it only happens in that branch. So let's go ahead and show you how that might work. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to go ahead and open this back up. And let's say we're going through the next round of color changes. We just want it perfect. Oops, that's on the container here. So let's make it something interesting. Go ahead and go here. Go this color. Make it some bright red. Okay. So now we have a bright red color. And I can go ahead and show you what it looks like. So, oh, did I not save that? Let me see here. I must not have
looks like you said border color.
Oh, my bad.
Yep.
Save it. And I'll go in here. Oh, I must be hitting the wrong thing. I'm sorry. Background color. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There we go. Thank you, everybody. Third time's the charm. Right here. Working preview. Okay. So I go work with them, and maybe I go through some iterations there, but then go, oh, you know what? Didn't really like that. That's not really what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and close this here. I haven't checked this into Git. I could, but I'm going to go back in here. And right now, what I want to do is I want to go to the branch and I want to go back to my master branch. Now, what that does is it's essentially remembered everything before I started my branch. So let's go ahead and go to branch. Yep, and I'm going to say just leave my changes on that branch. Don't bring them over. So I'm going to switch the branch. Now, the cool thing is behind the scenes, Git has kind of moved the files around. So if I go back in here, you'll see something if I did it correctly. Voila. Notice I didn't have to remember what basically what it does is it tracks what files I changed. It's in that branch. So you go, oh yeah, and then I could go fix something here, etc. Then you say, oh, I'm ready to go back and work with the customer. So actually I usually close that alpha all the way, just something weird doesn't happen. But again, you know what, I'm ready to go back and continue working on the color. And I'll leave my changes. I go to my branch, go back in here. Oops. Yep. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back in. Oh, it didn't switch. Did I not move those changes over here? Let's see. That was going so good for there. It's custom deadline there. I must have applied them. Let's see. Must not have tried. Sorry, that less than. Did I not save those changes here? Oh, I might not have committed those changes to the color. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, yeah, let's do this. And I won't belabor it much. I hope people get the idea. So first we'll go ahead, we'll change this. Let's go to here. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's what I missed. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to go ahead and in the modified files, I'm going to change to bad color. I'll go all and checked it in. Now, when I commit it here, it's committing it into my branch. So you'll notice on my branch, I have a new one right here for this current branch. Now I'm going to say, you know what? I want to go back to my master. And I'm going to switch the branch back. Okay. Okay. Now when I go back in here, if this worked correctly, I go in working preview, now we should be back in our original master where we haven't changed the color. No, I'm doing something wrong. So much for a great demonstration. But the idea, oh wait, no, I got to go back to the branch master.
There you go.
There you go. I don't think I switched it probably. Okay.
It did give you an error. You want to check out when the changes are.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to part of the problem is I got to go ahead and discard those changes. Okay. You'll get used to those kind of things. Now I go to master. I got to get rid. This was a recent, and I got to give people a heads up. There's a reason for this. It has to do with how certain files are managed and things like that. I usually ignore this because it's only kind of used for stuff. So I apologize, this wasn't the most stellar of demonstrations, but what I really wanted to get across is that if you look in alpha, which is great, we really don't have the mechanisms to do branching and other things like that easily. And what you want to do is look at using a third-party tool to take care of your branches and other pieces there, and also things like publishing the repository to GitHub, because you may find it's just an easier tool to use, although I didn't prove that in our conversation today. Again, I like Tower, this one I use, but you know, this is free from GitHub. It's highly connected into GitHub. It's easy to use, download, and there's a lot of training and other things out there for it. And again, it's free. So this is a really handy piece. And as you get into more sophisticated development, you're going to want to use these techniques and use a more get to more effectivity, because you'll find it'll just make your life easier. Not what I showed today, but close to it from there. And I'll figure out why that. It has to do with this GUI ID file. I should have done an ignore on it. The problem is I have a master here. And if I go to switch that branch, it's giving me an error because it's basically saying, oh, maybe it didn't. Okay, let's go ahead and check. Maybe I had, once I changed or deleted that. Let's see, this should be, okay, there's my blue. Looks good. So let me go back here, go back and check out here. So I'll switch there. It may give me a problem with the other. Yep, okay. Then I go back in here. Now I can start, if this is working correctly, I can continue to start working on the color change issue. Yep, from there. It was that GUI ID there. But you can see you can have these branches. So if you're experimenting, you create a branch, do your stuff, and then what you can do, which is really cool within here, is you can say, great, I like my changes. I really want to keep with that color. I can now go in here and I can then do things like choose a branch to merge into it. So what I'll first do is go to master. And I'm going to go back to master. Now that I'm on master, I'm going to go here and I'm going to say choose a branch to merge into master, because what I want to do is take my branch and merge the changes back into there. So there. So I want to take that and I want to merge it. And again, I'm getting that project GUI ID. I got to get rid of that because that's just, it has to do with publishing and stuff. It really doesn't help there. By the way, to do that, I would go here and I would say add all GUI ID fields to git ignore, and we may cover that together. I don't want to belabor this, and I apologize. This was not as slick as I intended, but I want to give you an idea that these other third-party tools can make it a little easier for you to manage Git repositories. And once you get used to them, you'll be moving back and forth between stuff and pushing stuff up on GitHub, and really, really fun stuff. I think you'll enjoy it. So
cool. Thanks very much for that, Dion.
Yeah, sorry about that. Wasn't as clear.
One more sort of GitHub question. If you can you like if you're not using branches, just using keeping it all in the main branch, is it possible to roll back to an earlier version of
Good
something
point.
that you've done?
Cool. So first I'm going to do here is I'm going to add that to git ignore.
Okay.
And Sarah, we might want to update our documentation to make that as a standard. So I'll go git. And what git ignore is basically a file that says ignore anything that looks like this or has this name. And so now that. So if I go back, I'm on my master. I can look on here and I can look at the history. And here is my there. So I can sit there and go, oh, you know what? Let's go all the way back to the initial commit. So I can actually select that one right now. And I can say revert changes in commit. So that is where we'll actually revert those changes.
Yeah.
But that I don't want to revert. I want to actually, I guess, yeah, let's go. Let's try that. Let's do that. Revert changes. Oh, it's that project GUI ID.
It's still the GUI issue. Well.
That, I gotcha. So hint, word to the wise, here's my git ignore file when I originally created it. I would add that in there. You know, if you'll see here, our new git ignore added this little piece of text there. I would add that in and right from the get-go so you don't have to deal with it. But the idea is I can go to here and say, revert changes and commit, but that's reverting. I really want to check that one out because I just want to look at it. So I'll play with that. Again, I'm newer. I mean, on
This
Tower,
is cool. I
don't.
hadn't really thought. Now I actually have this software, and I use the one from GitHub all the time, but I never thought of using it as an extension to Alpha Anywhere. It's a great idea. You just point it to your
Yeah,
local.
and it's just sort of like there's certain things once you fix like the GUI thing, it's visually easier. You can look at the branches here.
Yeah.
It's got this publish thing, very easy to put together, or you can set up your accounts. The other thing it has, which is nice, is let's say there's someone else has created a repository. I can actually clone a repository and it will clone it down into where I want it to go. So notice here, it's looking at all my different, like if I wanted to AA quick start, I could click here, choose where I want to put that, and then click clone, and boom, now I have all those files from GitHub down. And that's just a little easier in this visual interface, and then things like history and stuff are due there. And it has things like, not as helpful for us, but you notice that when I look at the history here, if I click on like this here, it shows me the changes. Now, granted, Alpha works more on a control could have like 100 changes, so it's not as helpful.
Yeah,
but if you're looking at text,
it's not very readable, but at least
yeah. But if you're looking at text files, like you have like a good example would be an XBasic script or an XBasic module or class, you can quickly see what has changed between those classes, and it's got this built-in diff capability and history from there. So it's pretty nice, pretty handy.
That is cool.
Yeah, it seems like what it's doing is every time it's writing a new project GUI ID, and so A, that's going to get noisy over a while, and B, if I have two branches, these GUI IDs are, and so it gets confused saying, wait, you've changed it in both of these, you got to select one to overwrite. So if you just do a get ignore right out of the gate, you won't have to worry about that anymore. That'll make your life easier.
That is awesome. Thanks very much, Dion.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, well, it's helpful to me at least. So never mind everyone else on this call. Okay, so another question. This is sort of changing gears a little bit, in fact, a lot bit, which is, so you install the Alpha Anywhere IDE, say on a brand new machine. What do you usually do when you're setting up a workspace for the first time? Are there certain settings that you like to do? Do you like to set your editors a certain way? Do you like to have, for example, the web project's control panel be the thing that first launches? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Actually, to be honest, most of the time there's not a lot of changes. There's one particular change is that I always like to make sure, and this will ask you when it opens up, to make the web project control panel my initial point, because sometimes it'll go to here and you have to always click on here. So the setting, and it gives you an option with a little checkbox saying, always open up the web project control panel, do that for sure. Now, the other one that I think is really important.
If I was a dope and I just missed that box, right, then how could I set that setting again?
Yeah, I believe it's in control panel, use settings. And then in here, I think it's preferences. And then it mentions it. Startup. Okay, so you'll notice there's something in here. So again, let me go through that a little faster. Go to your control panel and go to View Settings. And as you see, there's a bunch, but what you want to focus on here is Preferences. And in Preferences, there's a couple things. So first thing I'm going to go down to is the Startup welcome screen. This allows you to re-enable the welcome screen. This is the default control panel prompt. That's the one that would allow you to change what is your default from the regular control panel or the web project's control bar. So when I say yes now,
that, and then you restart Alpha?
Yeah, restart Alpha, create a new workspace, and it's going to ask you where to go from there. Then once you've set that, you can then not have to show it going in the future. Now, the other thing I usually set is I go to HTML editor. and I use the default tab and I set that to source. Because
Right.
usually when I'm doing my HTML pages, I'm kind of just doing them for scripts and other things like that. And if you go, I've had some things happen where since it's what WYSIWYG and it will open up in WYSIWYG, and then when you save it, it overwrites something you had in there. So I tend to default my
Or
HTML
removes your
editor.
carriage returns, which is sort of irritating. So,
Yeah. So I tend to like to use my source panel. And just to show you what that is, just so they make sense, if I go here to HTML pages and create a new page, you'll notice it opens up here. So I can go, be hello. And if I go to live preview, I can live preview it here and it works. But now I can go to what you see is what you get. Now this is kind of nice. I can put in other text and do all these things and use an editor like that. And what's going on behind the scenes is it's basically writing my HTML for you. And then I can live preview and it looks good. Problem is when you start adding your own stuff in here and you go to what you said is what you get, it sometimes doesn't translate it back and forth very cleanly. So when it goes, if you reopen this and it's defaulted to this, and then you save it, it could cause a problem. So I always default mine to always open up in source. That way, if I want to see it, I can go into live preview. If I want to use what you see is what you get, but I know it's not going to change any of my stuff when I open it up, which is always kind of more of a stability question than anything else.
all right, one last thing. And when we do coding, and actually in this, those line numbers are awfully handy. How do you turn those on?
Good point. Yeah, you just right click anywhere, like if you're in the editor, and oh wait, let's see. I thought
maybe not for this one.
In the when you're using the
maybe not for HTML.
Yeah, I'm so used to. So with that, I think you would go to. Trying to think it's under here, but it might be. I thought it default to that, but I would go to audit.
I'm asking you the hard questions on the
I know, it's good. I just get it all set up.
Sorry about that.
Preferences. And that's default tab. That's a good question.
Just as
I know when you're in like, if you're in like here and you're in anywhere over here, you right click on here and it's got a little line numbers thing.
You can use line numbers there, yeah.
Yeah, but when you're in the editor, let's see, that's a really good question. Stump the person here.
Stump the expert.
Yeah, that's all just about the body. Properties, insert. I thought it would be in view settings.
Maybe you get it for free. Yeah. This whole dialog box is worth playing around with, though, I have to say, because there's a whole bunch of stuff in here.
I think it's one of those things that, like, over decades, this box has grown and stuff. My favorite is the web projects control panel area. Always good to go. Yeah, so I don't even know what that does. I'm not going to touch it.
That was the precursor of the web projects control panel.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, good question. We'll have to find out how you do those there. But I use line numbers everywhere because it's just so much easier when you're working with people to say, hey, look at line X versus go down 5 clicks and then do the right 4 things. And it's like a treasure hunt.
That is awesome. Well, believe it or not, I think we've run out of questions today.
Oh,
that does,
or bored them to death.
Or bored them to death, yeah. I know they seem to still be here. Anyway, if you do have questions.
Hey, Dave, I hate to tell you, but everybody on there is a bot.
It's a Russian bot. Take what we can get, yeah. If you do have future questions, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES, @alphasoftware.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Dion, thank you very much for presenting today. Sarah, thank you for being there and providing the helpful answers there on the chat window, keeping us honest.
Super helpful.
Hope to see you at our next Wednesday's webinar. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.